In just a few hours, the NFL trade deadline will have come and gone. And we're going to have a lot of answers. As a matter of fact, by the time a lot of you guys watch this video, we're going to have some answers about roster construction and kind of what's going to happen during this NFL offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. So today's the only day to really kind of get this topic out at this point. So let's talk about it, guys. Trade deadline, Philadelphia Eagles, buyers, sellers. What are we? All right, y'all. Let's get it. What's up, Eagles Nation? What's going on, NFL world? How you doing, division rivals? This is Steven Hyder with Gate City Sports Channel, the sports channel where the cerebral NFL fan comes for about 10 minutes of daily content. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is you get around to watching this, guys. Once again, my name is Steven Hyder, and this is Gate City Sports Channel. All right, y'all. Today's topic, we're going to talk trade deadline, some kind of news, some notes, things going on, right? I expect, I'm going to be honest with you, I expect this to be pretty uneventful for the Eagles, although I do think there are some remote possibilities of maybe adding, a contact bounce back. I'm not going to get my hopes up, but possibly, right? An attempt to add some kind of a veteran presence who could help this year opposite of Darius Slay, right? Not a long-term fix per se, but somebody who could step in and maybe help this last year, you know what I mean, to kind of help us solidify until we get to the draft. Linebacker help, right? I definitely think we could use, somebody who's a legitimate playmaker stepping in the linebacker position. I love what we saw out of Alex Singleton. I love what we've seen so far out of TJ Edwards. But let's be real, we could use another solidified linebacker in that room. So I think those are the areas where we could potentially see additions. But I also think that we would much rather be sellers, okay? The problem is we put a lot of guys on IR that we'd want to sell, right? I mean, let's just be real. Djax. Then you look at Ertz. A lot of guys that we probably would have sold, possibly or potentially if there were interest in them. Unfortunately, we had to IR them, and the league rules around this to make sure teams didn't skirt things kind of presents us from doing this. So, without further ado, let's kick it off, and I'll go through these kind of topical, and we'll talk about 2020 trade deadline for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, y'all. Let's get it. First up, I want to talk about two players that went off the board real quickly that I really had interest in the Eagles adding. Number one, the linebacker from the Jets, Avery Williamson, which didn't he sign with Pittsburgh, I want to say, or something? He got traded to Pittsburgh or something like that, I think. Avery Williamson would have made a lot of sense in the linebacker room. This was a young kid that could have grown with these linebackers. This wasn't a kid that you're only going to get on a one-year kind of thing. You could have definitely tried to work that contract in. I know we're up against a particular cap situation, but it would have been in conjunction with selling pieces or obviously dumping and shedding a lot of roster next year. So Avery Williamson, I would have loved to add it. Pittsburgh, once again, I believe is who ended up trading for him. Pittsburgh, they beat me to the punch because they got Minkah Fitzpatrick last year, and that was a guy that I was really beating the table for the Eagles to go get last year, Minkah Fitzpatrick. The other player that I could have seen, he's not the greatest in terms of the height range, but I'm just talking about competent third guys or even second guys, like someone who could play opposite of Darius Slay or at least come in and relieve Maddox and help out when injuries occur, because we had an envisioned role for Craig James to do that, but he just hasn't been healthy enough this season, although he played really well in camp to really show that being that third corner, which has caused us to really invert our lineup a lot to use guys like Michael Jacquet, who I thought did a really good job last week until the injury. Then we've been moving and bouncing guys from safety to go play outside. We've been doing that with our nickel corners, right? I mean, we've been just moving guys all around to try to compensate for this. I thought Desmond King would have made a lot of sense. I think Desmond King would have stopped the necessity of us having to do that. Desmond King was picked up by the Titans, so that stops the momentum there. These are the two players that I really would have loved to have seen the Eagles go get, but we didn't. And it's unfortunate. I thought both of these guys could have helped the Philadelphia Eagles in this 2020 season without necessarily breaking the bank or jeopardizing further, roster construction on the Eagles. They could have been a piece of what we do, in the future, or you could have shed them and you'd have been okay. All right, y'all. So now I want to get into the aspects of who's still available. All right. I had to identify what I think are the likely places I feel like the Eagles would go. I think the Eagles need a contact bounce back. Let me say that on the record. I just don't feel they'll do it. Okay? They have said that they really like Elijah Holyfield, but have yet to call him up with all the rules in place. We have yet to use Elijah Holyfield on the active roster. I don't buy in. I hope I'm wrong, guys. I hope at like 5 o'clock, I was like, Gate, you missed it. They did do it. I don't think it's going to happen. So I left contact bounce backs off my list. Yes, Jordan Howard make a lot of sense. A lot of guys like, yes, guys, I agree. But I got no confidence it's going to happen. So here's what I do see. The Eagles love to add defensive ends, and I don't think we particularly need them, but you always got to be mindful of the Eagles and defensive ends. Defensive line help in general will do stuff like that. Linebacker. I do think that the organization is starting to understand that you need linebacker help. Just look how much Alex Singleton and TJ Edwards, kind of changed life a little bit for the defense last week, just because they're not great, but they're competent. And competency translated into generally good play. Yes, Ben DiNucci played a big part in that too, guys, because he's not very good. I do think linebacker plays, is somewhere you could look. The last place being is, guys, we need a corner opposite of Darius Slay. Someone who can either be your second or that third corner. You have to have somebody. It was a big mistake not to carry a third outside corner and just say, like, oh, we'll get by with Craig James doing it. We can bounce some of our safeties if we have to. I think it was a mistake, guys. I know we envisioned this, like, defense of alignment list defenders out there, but we haven't really lived up to that. So here are some of the guys I see as potential trade targets, okay? At the defensive end position, I could see a guy like Trent Murphy, former Washington Redskin, right? Had a really good year back in 2016. He was a really good end for them. Fouled that up. He got injured in 2017. That was kind of the downfall for him there. Then he ended up bouncing in Buffalo. And he's been a decent, not worth the money they've been paying him, but a decent kind of defensive end there for them. A guy that can get you, 4 or 5 sacks a year. He's a competent kind of like third off the bench type guy. The question I will have there is, like, don't we already kind of have that guy? You know what I mean? Like, isn't that kind of already what we have in a guy like Vinny Curry? Isn't that already like the competent backup situation? So, how much I buy into Trent Murphy being added, I don't know. I just always know the Eagles love to add. They love to add defensive linemen. 6'6", 260. He's got the frame the Eagles like. He's 29, so he's got the veteran presence, but he's not over the hill yet. I will say that his contract is a little expensive, man. He's 6.4 against, base salary. He's $9.75 million against the cap, but he's not going to count, that would be eaten by the Bills. But we would be on the hook for that 6.4 base. That's a little expensive for a guy that might only give you 3 or 4 sacks. So, I don't know. Eyes are on it, but I don't know how I feel about that. Linebackers. I really wanted Avery Williamson, guys. I'm not going to lie. But there's been a guy who's been linked to us for a long time. Arizona Cardinals linebacker Hassan Riddick. He makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, man. Young, athletic defender. This kid, I fear he's going to be very costly if you go get him. I think that's the problem. Is that he went up and played he played like 90-some% of Arizona's snaps in the last game. So that tends to lead to somebody who they're either trying to really get decent value for, right? So they're letting him play more. But it doesn't help the Eagles when he produces in that too, because now he's got 3 sacks on the year, right? He's got like an additional 3 quarterback hurries. Like, Hassan Riddick went off. He's a very good blitzing linebacker. He would clearly be the most athletic guy in that room. He would definitely be far and above anyone else the Eagles have signed recently. The Eagles have on this roster. I mean, straightforward, Hassan Riddick would be a difference maker in this defense, even if he's not a top, 12 to 15 linebacker in the league, or even top 20. In the Eagles defense, he would be a major, major addition. Hassan Riddick, love it, but he is on the end of a rookie contract, so he would be very affordable this year. But then we'd have to figure out trying to extend him. Can we get this under contract? Would he be willing to take a really low pay for 2021 to get phenomenal pay in 2022? All those things come into play there, guys. There's some difficulty because of our cap situation with that. Corner's the next area I think we really need. We need bodies, and I'll give you two players I feel like would be good fits here. Number 1 player, Cincinnati. I wouldn't even put him up there just because Cincinnati doesn't normally trade, but they traded Carlos Dunlap. They've been talking about John Ross. Maybe they'll trade William Jackson III. William Jackson III would be a legitimate defender opposite of Slay with very decent skill sets. Now, I will say this about William Jackson III. He would be costly. $9.5 million again, base salary. He's going to cost you. Now, could you rework that? He probably would rework it to get out of Cincinnati. He probably would take a lot less to get out of there. But now you're adding steps to get him traded. I would love the value of William Jackson III. Definitely a good defender. But there's a lot of obstacles there. But I could definitely see that adding him beside, then you start using other guys in that third corner role. Because to me, William Jackson III would clearly be the second defender here. But there's obstacles. That's all I'm going to say. There's obstacles, but I love the player. I would have never thought that this would have been available before, but it does seem like maybe the maybe the Bengals are a little more willing to sell parts now. I'll give you another guy, the Jets. The Jets they're a crap shoot. And I do think they have one player of value outside of Avery Williamson the Eagles might look at, okay? Poole, their nickel corner, is a very good player. I don't think that we're going to go there just because, when you look at Strap, then you look at Nickel Roby-Coleman, then you look at Avonte Matt. Like, come on, you can't keep adding nickels. But they do have a guy named Pierre Desir, who played in Indianapolis a couple of years ago and was really good in Indianapolis. Back when Indianapolis, I think it was like 2018 or so, when they had the highest coverage grade in the NFL, Pierre Desir played a large role in that, guys. He's a veteran guy at 30. He's a guy that you could plug in this year. Maybe he's back next year, but it's not a big deal if he's not. You can go into the draft, but he gives us a competent defender this season, right? We need that. We definitely need a competent defender to play beside Slay right now. I love the physical makeup of the kid, 6'1", 198 pounds. He's got 3 interceptions on the year. His coverage rating isn't the greatest right now. It's a 54.6, which would lead to me believing that he would be kind of expendable. I don't think his salary would cost us that much, honestly, right now. But who knows? I'd have to really look into particulars of his contract. I don't think he's really on a big expensive contract, though, to be honest. He's a guy that I would look to. I think he would make a lot of sense here, and I think he'd be a good veteran presence for the Eagles to do a very, not a huge deal kind of trade that could pay dividends and pay benefits. Now, it's not going to rally the fan base. Most of the fan base is probably like, who is this gate? But nonetheless, I think he could be a solid addition to the Eagles. All right, let's talk sellers. Sellers. We would love to sell. That's no secret. The problem is I don't know what we have that anyone would want outside of Derek Barnett, potentially a Jannard Avery. I don't really think we should be trading away defenders unless we're going to add a defender like we're going to get like a Trent Murphy in return or somebody in return to kind of maybe take snaps there to go along, because then you would have to add to your rotation at that point. You still got Curry there at that point. You still got Sweat, but if you traded one of those two guys, I think you have to add back. So I don't know what else you could do there. I mean, I just, of course those guys have value across the league. I do think that maybe it would make sense, not necessarily to trade Barnett. I think we need Barnett. I think Barnett has to be a part of the future, unfortunately, for the Eagles. We do have to figure out his contract situation. I can't see us paying him $10 million next year, but I do think he has to be a part of the future here just because of necessity. Outside of that, though, guys, I think Jannard Avery, we probably should give it an opportunity to play somewhere where he can get more snaps. That's all I'll say about Jannard Avery. Other players that could potentially have trade value for the Eagles, there's been some rumors that Green Bay may have some interest, especially since they just missed out. They missed out on Antonio Brown. They might have interest in Alshon Jeffries. We would probably have to eat some of the contract for them to take him. This might be a situation where we have to trade a pick and eat a little of his contract, not the full value, or else why would we trade him? But, we might have to eat a little of it to make it more, appeasing for a team to come and take that on, or have him agree to rework the contract to go to a destination, which is a potential possibility, but you're adding steps to trade him. That's the problem. I'm going to watch that one, but I'm not very hopeful there. The last one, I hate to say it, guys, but apparently we've been fielding phone calls on Will Parks. I don't like that move. I think Will Parks is a young defender. I think he's a guy that could grow in this Philadelphia Eagles defense. I think it's a piece you kind of keep around and you keep in this organization. But other teams who are competitors, who want to compete for a title, are looking at him and saying he can help us. I mean, look, if you got a ridiculous value offer for Will Parks, I get it. If someone offered a third round or better, sure. 4th round, I'd consider it, but I don't know I'd make that move because I think he does return, he has an ability to help this defense too. So if you get a ridiculous offer, I get it, but I wouldn't move Will Parks unless the offer was just ridiculous because I think the kid could be an actual part of this defense going forward. I don't know outside of that, guys, who else would really have value to trade. I'm going to be real with you. I don't think anyone else really has any value that any other team would really want who is not on injury reserve. I think that's the pieces I would consider potentially being moved, right? No one's going to want any of our linebackers. I already named the defensive ends, and I named the secondary piece that could happen. Our receivers we're not going to move outside of Alshon Jeffrey. We probably would have moved Deshaun Jackson if he was healthy, but that's not going to happen now. I think that's it, guys. Let me know what you think about the trade deadline, guys. These are my thoughts on the trade deadline, but, fill me in. What do you think about the trade deadline? All right, y'all. That's all I got for y'all today. Hey, maybe we have something to talk about later on today. Maybe I'll have to make another video talking about someone that we've added, pieces that we've moved. We'll see, guys. 2020 trade deadline. What can you do, guys? All right, y'all. Peace. I'm out of here. And let's do a little E-N-G-L-E-S. All right. Let's go, Eagles.